Good evening and welcome. Again, good evening and welcome to this session of Tuesday's Encounters in New York. This program is presented every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. My name is Mark Beecher, and I'll be your host today. Our guest tonight is Virginia Paciocco. Virginia is a life coach and advertises her business as the awareness coach. And tonight, Virginia is going to talk to us about unlocking your true potential with the use of astrology. So, Virginia, if you can open your microphone and join us.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Okay, there we go. I'm better now.
Oh, good.
Okay. So would you just give us a little introduction of yourself and of your business? And
Sure. So my name is Virginia, as you said. Great pronunciation of my last name. So thank you. It's Paciocco. I know it's a difficult one.
we have a car dealership here that's Paciocco, and it's spelled like almost the same way. So
Perfect. I'm Italian. I've been in Las Vegas for about 30 years. I was in corporate America, and then I journeyed into the spiritual world and the coaching world. So I'm an ICF accredited life coach, but I began investigating astrology about 5 years ago, and I use it as a self-development tool to help people stay in alignment with themselves and gain sovereignty over their inner life and their outer life. So I'm here to just share information and help people understand how they could use their own astrology as a guide to fulfill their potential and just as a tool of understanding. A lot of people feel astrology can be a predictor or fortune telling, but I use it in my business more as a tool to guide people than I do for future telling.
very good. I've never understood the rules of astrology, and it's very complicated, I'm sure, but
Yes, it is.
how much do you need to know individually to use it, or do you just rely on you as the consulting to lead you?
So I'm a guide for sure, but there's so many resources on your own that you could look up. There's free websites. You can get your chart if you want to investigate. I mean, the job of the astrologer is just to interpret the meanings of the symbols, but you know your life best. So for sure, you could go use it on your own without me. But sometimes, even for myself, it's hard me being in my own life. I go to an astrologer to help me because I can get in my own way with what I'm seeing because I only have my limited perspective.
Right. I know when Ronald Reagan was president, and
Yeah.
his wife was very famous for taking advice from her astrologer.
Yeah.
And was it really specific items that they take advice from? I mean, as you said, you interpret, but is there really specific advice you're
Sure.
able to give?
Yes, there can be. It's kind of like being a physician. You know, you go to school and you're a general practitioner, and then there's specialties. So astrology has specialties. So there is a thing called horary astrology that can literally tell you in detail, like my friend, no joke, helped my sister find her necklace that my mom had with the chart. Now, that's not my specialty, but there are people who do that. I'm sure the Reagans used people who were able to narrow down that kind of timing.
And that was one of my questions. Is there a particular segment of our society that you specialize in?
Yeah, yes, you could say that I do. Spiritual seekers, people that want to evolve and they want to understand themselves and they want to I would say the spiritual community is definitely my people who believe already. I'm not here to convince or beg anyone that astrology works. So if you're already open and you're spiritual and you just want to get to know yourself, find your purpose, know what your gifts are, then that is my lane.
um, I'm always a little surprised how astrology has such a lifelong effect
Yeah,
on each individual.
totally.
Okay, it's based on the time of your birth,
It is.
basically.
Yep.
Um, and then it follows you the rest of your life.
Yes, and it's also based on longitude and latitude, actually. So where you're born matters, the date, time matters. And it's in my presentation, I will answer that question fully. It is a life blueprint, but it's not static. It changes. I mean, because the planets kept moving after you took your first breath. So it didn't just stop when we're born, right? We want to be special,
Right.
but it kept going. So there is that gets added to it, but it is a blueprint.
Okay, it's okay. Besides affecting us individually,
Yes.
can it have effect on overall culture?
Yes.
You know, I mean, particularly different countries are so culturally different, then astrology would have an effect on the overall culture as well as the individual.
Well, sure. And they have what's called mundane astrology. They cover politics, they cover countries. Like our country has its own birth chart on the day of the independence. So, you know, that's mundane astrology. Then there's individual astrology. And sure, wherever you're born, you know, and anybody born, so there's considered outer planets and inner planets. And the outer planets would dictate a culture or society or a shift in society. Like Pluto, for example, just moved into Aquarius after 20 years. So now culture will shift.
Well, that's the part that most of us don't understand is
Sure,
how
they tune out, right? Like then it's like, oh, what happened?
the planets are moving.
And I brought some pictures and stuff to help like maybe give some visuals around that. But to answer your question, yes, it can affect society and cultures.
Okay. So I guess if you'd like to just step up to your presentation and
Sure.
we're
And
willing to listen.
And I'm happy to take questions, you know, in the middle or whatever needs to happen, because I know astrology is complicated. So I'm going to try to make this as simple and useful as possible so that not to get deer in the headlight effect with all the craziness that astrology can bring. So like, as you said, unlocking your true potential, that's the point of my presentation. And my intention and hope is to help people understand that they're more than their sun sign. Most people understand, oh, I'm a Gemini, but the chart offers so much more than that. And like I said, it is a cosmic blueprint, right? So if you've never seen an astrology chart, this is the chart for today, 3:52 p.m. And the blueprint says this is for the rest of your life, but how do you step into it? So ultimately it's a guide for you. And just a side note for people who don't understand symbols but they're good at visuals, there's something called Sabian symbols, and you can see right here how this is 14 degrees. This would be the symbol for that. So if you can't interpret, there are pictures that can help you. So if you were to look at that picture, you could understand your sun sign just by looking at the picture. Two Dutch children talking. And you can create your meaning from that if you're not an astrologer and you want to simplify it. That's just, and I put a website down there that people could go to if they wanted to investigate Sabian symbols. But the point of this slide is, it is a roadmap for your life. It is a cosmic blueprint. But we're going to start right now with the sun. So when people say, what is your sun sign? They know that you were born on a certain day. And I have a little arrow here in this chart. This circle in the dot is the symbol for the sun. It is in the sign of Gemini. So that's what says, I'm a sun in Gemini. However, we can't just limit someone to that one little sliver of this whole picture. We need to understand that we all have unique full dynamics more than just our sun sign. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so what does the sun bring to you in your chart? Your core identity, your ego, and your life purpose. So that's what the sun is telling you. And it's also saying, what gives me vitality? What gives me energy? If I'm fully using my essence, what is that? Sun in Gemini would say this person needs to communicate. They need to talk. They need to be a talk show host. If your sun's in Gemini, I imagine, Mark, you have Gemini somewhere in your chart to be a speaker, a presenter, a sharer of information. Somewhere in your chart, if not your sun sign, Gemini's hanging out.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Mostly I'm here because Ernie recruited me. So
Oh, he recruited you. Okay, so you don't know it, but I would love to do your chart and investigate that, because I can assure you that, you know, if you're doing anything in communication, broadcasting, Gemini is around, because those are key words for that sign. But for the practical takeaway, knowing your sun sign helps you understand what keeps you vital, what keeps you having energy, and keeps you off of feeling sad, depressed, and down. Feed your sun what it wants. And if it's in the sign Gemini, feed it communication. So that's important.
Okay. So you could absolutely tell somebody, you're just going in the wrong direction. You're doing the wrong thing, and it's really suppressing you as a person.
That's a deep question. Yes, you could do that because we have our conditioning, right? We grew up in our household. Your son is in this sign, but your parents is another sign, and they want to imprint out of just lovingness something onto you that may not even fit with you, but you grew up in that environment and you could be out of alignment. So the purpose of astrology for me is to help you get back in alignment, regardless of your childhood conditioning. You could use past life regression for that. There's many tools. This is the tool that I choose to help you uncover where your vitality is and how maybe you got off track.
Okay, that's very interesting
Ponder.
to say that, that's something that's really concrete that could help you say, okay, what direction would I, want to make a decision to move my life to?
Correct. Yeah, what would be in alignment with the energy that makes my ego, my core identity feel satisfied? And I know the talk, I don't want to make it too long, so I'm going to move on to the next planet, but we'll make this all cohesive. So the next important planet, which is what the talk's about, the sun, the moon, and the rising, if you can see this little arrow, is the moon sign. So we just previously spoke that the sun was your identity and your ego, but the moon is your emotional compass. So if you only know someone's sun sign, you could be missing the boat on how to communicate with them because their subconscious and their inner self has a different guidance system. This moon's in Taurus today. That would be, what a Taurus needs is safety and security versus a Gemini needs to talk. So Taurus moon would need comfort. So getting to know the people we're around is also another tool of astrology. How do I be in relationship with other people that are different than me? That's a practical use. If I highly recommend, if you don't know your person, your friends, your mom's moon sign, get to know it because it will let you know what emotionally that person needs. And maybe you're giving them what you emotionally need, but they have a separate need. Emotions we're talking about, not ego, not vitality. We're talking about inner life. So you can see, like, some people it's the same, some people it's different. This particular chart, which is just transit for today, this isn't a person, but their sun and their moon have different needs. So what their ego needs and what their emotion needs, two different things. But we have to learn how to make this cohesive if we want to be happy. So that's the trick. That's where I can coach people, or people can get coaching or investigate for themselves. How do I integrate my moon needs and my identity needs, my inner self and my personality, for lack of a better word? How does that, do you have any questions?
Lots. Well, right away, we're a lot more in depth than I was.
Than you were expecting.
Than I was expecting, yes.
And that's what people don't understand about astrology.
Right. It's, for lack of a better description, it was always listed as junk science, right?
Sure.
So, and, possibly maybe in some of the Asian cultures and things, it's more prominent than in the Western culture.
Or India.
Yeah. And, we don't necessarily pay attention to it other than, as you said, other than relationships, it's like,
sure,
the two sun signs are incompatible or compatible, right. That type of thing. So.
That's a marketing thing because they had to generalize it because they made a column in the newspaper. And how can you be specific like this in the column of the newspaper so people just think that's all it is? But it is so much more. And when you look into it, it's a fact. And if you're bored and retired and you have nothing to do, go learn astrology. You'll never be bored again because it's so, there's just so much to understand.
Well, how much preparation does a client need to do to present to you to create a chart?
All they have to do is give me those 3 requirements. They have to give me their birth date, month, date, and year.
Mhm.
And the time is the most crucial thing, because if they say, oh, I think I was born around 11, that really can throw the whole chart off, because this little part right here that says AS, every 4 minutes it moves. So if you tell me a time and you tell me 4 hours different, the whole entire dynamic changes, and then it will not feel right. It'll feel like a pebble in your shoe.
Mm.
And then the city and state, that's all they need to give me. And then I take it from there, and I'll help walk you through everything that you need to know. Maybe not in 1 hour, but I can support the person in understanding it. So yeah, just those 3 things and book a time. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Or go online, there's astro.com. You can put your information in there and this will pop up, but it's very complicated if you don't know. So a lot of times they go to an astrologer for an explanation.
Right. Oh, absolutely. This
Yeah.
take a lot of years of studying to actually understand
Yes.
this chart.
I've been studying for 5 and I'm a baby. There are people that have been doing this for 40, 50 years that are still learning and understanding.
Right.
For sure. So the next important piece that I created a slide about is the rising sign. And if you can remember just that, your sun, your moon, and your rising, that's very important. And for those people who like to go on the internet and Google what's my horoscope, almost all the internet horoscopes are based on this rising sign, not the sun sign, in order to make it, uniform for people. So learn your rising sign. So when you're looking in the horoscope or you're looking online on YouTube, it will be more accurate for you. And the rising sign is your outer persona. It's the person you show up on a date with, person you show up at the office to. It's how others perceive you. And it's also the you that you're growing into. So, funny practical use of this too. If you're single and you're dating, you meet the rising sign on a date. You don't truly meet their personality, characteristic, or their emotions. You meet this person. So if you wonder why, wow, the first date was great and they showed up and this is how they were, and then you got to know them, and that was just the doorway into getting to know the person. Now all of a sudden they quickly changed, because the front door, you can't stay there. You have to be your sun sign. So knowing someone's rising sign is a crucial part of astrology, so that you can understand how you are perceived by the people that you meet.
Okay.
Does that sound
That,
digestible?
that's a new element that I didn't ever know about. So
Yeah, and a lot of people will ask you, oh, so what are your top 3? And they're talking about your sun in Gemini, your moon in Cancer, and your rising sign. This one is in Virgo. So for example, do you have a question?
well, it just struck me, how mostly in media, it's like somebody meets somebody and they'd say immediately, "I know you're a Capricorn." Is that truly an element that you see?
Sure. I mean, that could be an element, because someone's sun sign could be in Capricorn and their rising sign. That says you are who you are on the inside and on the outside, but not everybody has that. So they could be displaying those traits because the chart itself is dominant, because you can see there's lots of signs here. But if someone has, like, this chart has a lot of Gemini, all 4 of these planets are in Gemini, that means that person would display a lot of those characteristics. So that's, but the ones that are hard to choose, it's because they're a little bit more multifaceted in their signs. So you could do that, but I don't like to even guess like that as an astrologer, because I would never want to put someone in one bucket, because we're so much more than just, oh, you're a Capricorn. So I don't choose to use that myself.
Are there like seasonal signs and grouped together like quarterly throughout the year? I mean, summer signs are different than winter signs, or
Sure, that is a part of astrology. There's 4. So there's the summer, winter, spring, fall, and there's 3 signs grouped in each one of those categories. Like summer is Cancer and Leo, and Gemini. So that's the summertime. Capricorn, Sag, Aquarius, that's the wintertime. So yes, that's another layer of understanding about a person, is that what season are they born in? I don't know if you're familiar with the moon. You know how the moon has a full moon and then a new moon?
Right.
You can tell a lot about a person by what phase the moon was in. So it will be as complicated as you like. So for this talk, I left it at sun, moon, and rising because it can get very heady. But like that's how much you can get to know about yourself. That's the beauty of astrology and looking past you're more than your sun sign. Are you confused yet?
Now I can see that we're more than the sun sign. So
Yeah, it's pretty complicated. I'm going to move to the next. So integrating all three, right? How do we do that? If you can learn to harmonize your ego, your emotional life, and your outer persona, that will help you act in alignment with yourself to make decisions that are more true for you and to allow you to live an authentic, purposeful life. So how do I harmonize is the question. And the deeper question is, what if I have three that are all completely different? This is easy to do when you have three signs that get along, but what if your top three are polar opposite from each other? Then your work in self-development is a little harder because you have to learn how to harmonize three things that don't exactly get along. Does that make
that,
sense?
well, I was just thinking of the difficulty.
Yeah, it's
And I think most of us would be in big trouble. We're not really harmonizing. Uh, is it innate? I mean, it's sort of an innate thing where over time, we learn to harmonize without specifically saying, okay, I know a chart is this and that. But I mean, just somehow innately we uh, integrate these things and reach some harmony.
I think there's potential for that. I think it takes consciousness, awareness, and intuitively knowing yourself in order to harmonize those things. And then my key phrase for the whole year is radical acceptance. Radically accepting yourself as, let's say you're, an Aquarius type who internally loves to be alone, but your rising sign loves being in relationships. So how do you find balance between alone time and being with others? Can you innately harmonize that? I don't know. Most of the time we have to get bumps along the road to find out the hard way, how to do that. I think, is it possible to do it? Yes. With consciousness and awareness, we can learn to harmonize those things. I mean, experience, maturing.
Right. Now,
Question.
people that are in public life, like the politicians or
Sure.
anybody that needs to sell something,
Yep. Yep.
are they a very successful person in that field? Would they be more harmonized um, in
Uh,
presenting their message, or is just the outer persona just
sure.
is more important to them than the other two elements?
So I would say like Libra is usually associated with politics. So it's possible they have a lot of Libra in their chart, so they know how to harmonize with the public. Does that mean they know how to harmonize within themselves when they get off that, medium? No, that's no guarantee, So it's like what they perceive, they are very excellent at harmonizing with the public, understanding, fighting for the people. Libra is all about justice. But whether they in their personal life, which is clear in politics, know how to do that is a whole nother game.
Um, yeah, I'm just thinking that um, the way politics are today, everything is just fractured, and it
Sure.
doesn't seem like anybody really um, has.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what I want to say, but nobody really has a good message or a good
Mhm.
integration. Um,
So that has more to do with mundane astrology and what's going on for the whole world, because the whole world has been in a period of breakdown, so something new can happen, but we're still in breakdown. And unfortunately, to start something new, we have to get rid of something old. So I'm not into politics very much myself, but I can see the breakdown. But I have full faith that that has to happen for something new to arrive. So we have to understand that things go in phases, and we've been in a ending phase up until recently before something new can start. So I think that has more to do with the collective than the individual person's chart.
Okay. I have a question here in the chat.
Sure.
Well, yeah, you said you need to have the location of the birth to a chart. So the question was, people in the southern hemisphere are different than the north, but just any location, right? But the do the moon signs change in the northern and southern hemisphere?
Well, everything flips around from the northern to the southern. Like people in Australia, like it does flip. It has to do with longitude, latitude, the maps. I mean, luckily, thank goodness for software. If you know where you were born, you put the software in there, it will calculate the whole thing. Unless you're doing a chart by hand, which I don't recommend because it's extremely difficult. You
Right.
can just put your information in there and it takes all of that in account. But it's
So,
complicated. Yeah, it's very complicated.
so artificial intelligence is helping yet again, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because trust me, back in the day when they didn't have all that and they were doing it by hand, and the Greeks, like God love them, it would probably take them a whole day to figure it out.
No.
Yeah.
What else did they have to do?
Yeah, what else did they looked at the stars all day? That's what they did, and they saw and watched the planets, moving around in the sky. And it's really much more mathematical and pattern oriented than people understand. Like this, if you go to an astrology conference, there's so many attorneys, lawyers, brilliant people, because this is very cerebral more than it is woo-woo.
Well, okay. So who developed in ancient world, who developed the astrology?
I mean, it was Mesopotamia, it was the Greeks, the Persians, and then, as time moved and everybody separated, in India, they have Vedic astrology. In the West, we have Western astrology. But it really started back with, in ancient Persia, Egypt, Greece. It's very old.
So,
It,
so,
it,
uh, so all the kings and queens and
yes.
emperors, they all had their astrologer on their assistants, right?
Oh, and medicine, you had to be an astrologer to be a doctor back in the day before astronomy and astrology split. You literally had to know astrology, and I do not specialize in medical astrology. I could give you names of people who do. They literally do just medicine, the body, and how to heal with a person's chart based on their planets. But that's a specialized division of astrology.
Was Nostradamus an astrologer?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Yep,
Okay.
he sure was. I think Albert Einstein, Carl Jung, Carl Jung was a big time astrologer, if you're familiar with him.
Right. Okay.
Edward Casey, I think, even used astrology, if you're familiar with him.
Oh, I'm sure he probably did.
Yeah, for sure. So this is another layer that I wanted to share. If it's not too complicated, are we okay on time?
Oh, we're fine.
Okay.
You're the only limitation on our time.
Okay, so we'll do this. Okay, so this is a simple practical tool that you could use, right? The planet, let's say the sun, is what is happening. What is happening? The sun, my ego, my identity. How is it happening? The sign, Gemini, that's the adjective. Where is that happening is these 12 houses. So this particular example, the sun in the ninth, says this person gets vitality from ninth house activities, divination, studying, taking long trips, higher education. So knowing what house your sun sign is, another clue of how to keep your sun happy, vitalized. So let's say someone who has a sun in the 10th and they need to be a public figure and they take a job in the warehouse in the back room as an accountant. Their sun is not going to be happy because it wants to be recognized on a public stage. How did you end up in the back room of a warehouse? Maybe that's where your dad worked and you followed his trail, but that was not that wasn't your soul's intention. And your soul will scream at you until you get out of the back room and you get into a public image, because that's what your sun needs. So understanding in what area of life that your sun falls is another way to feed your sun sign, which is basically your vitality. It's how you embrace and express yourself. So, I can quickly go. The first house is about image. The second house is about money. The third house is communication. The fourth is family. Fifth is creativity. Sixth is health. Seventh is marriage, relationship. Eight is debt, taxes. Ninth is studying, guru. 10th is probably politicians. It's how you appear in the public. 11th house is group activity. Do you like working with networks? 12th house is religion, monks, spiritualists. They're hanging out in the 12th. So go find out where your sun sign is so you can feed it what it needs to fully express itself.
Now, okay. The 12 houses are based on the sun sign,
So the
but
12,
not,
yes.
not the birth sign.
Right. So there's a natural order of things. The first house is naturally ruled by Aries. The second one is Taurus. So yes, it is in relationship to the signs.
Okay.
Yep. And so it's about blending and integrating. That's where the confusion comes in, right? So to keep it simple, yes, the first house is ruled by Aries, but it has to do with your appearance, your identity. So if someone has a sun sign in the first, they want to look good. They want to be pretty. They want the world to know them as being pretty. How they look on the outside is very important to them. They get a mate who doesn't really care about that and doesn't give them compliments. This person's going to be unhappy.
Now the current, the current environment, a few weeks ago, we had, I guess, a large amount of solar flares.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Did that change things for you, or
I think
that
it's
didn't really have
it can, yes, it can. But as far as astrology goes, it's all about energy, and the solar flares, I think, affect us all on an energetic level. And but then how does it affect you individually? It gets filtered through your chart. So yes, it affects us. It affects us all differently based on your chart.
um,
Have I converted you yet, Mark, into an astrology lover?
have to,
I'm working on it.
well, see, basically almost every week we have a new topic, and at the end of the topic, we're convinced that we want to go and do that immediately.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm just piquing interest. That's my only
Uh,
intention. Pique interest.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'm gonna have to look. I don't know if locally we have anybody that's
You
in the
do.
business of doing astrology.
Oh my gosh, you do. And I'll send you to
I'm,
her, but she's very
uh,
expensive in New York. I'm
yeah,
telling you that. Her name is Ann Ortley. Look her up.
yeah. Oh, I never go in the city.
Okay. Yeah. She charges Manhattan prices. Let me just tell
Yeah,
you that.
yeah. Um, well, and that was it. Another question, if somebody contacts you to get a chart,
Sure.
how long does it take you to do a chart?
So,
Just
it takes me a couple of hours to review. The computer does the chart. That's not the hard part. Learning about the person and interpreting to them in a way that's practical for them. On the back end, it takes me I try to take around 2 hours before the call. And then the call that itself with the client is 1 hour long for me to explain my findings, right? Because everybody's chart's unique. So I can't just show up and it's just unique to them. So that's part of the pricing for people who charge a lot. They do spend time, a couple of hours preparing for you and then an hour with you. So that's just something to keep in mind. And I work via Zoom. So I have clients all over the place. So you don't have to be in New York to get your chart done. You can do it via Zoom.
right. I had a question that just went out of my mind.
Okay.
Oh, well, okay. Now I'm retired. I've been retired for like 5 years now.
Uh-huh.
So I'm in a whole different phase of my life.
Sure.
So I'm essentially probably not out trying to develop a new career path.
Right.
And I would think in terms of life coaching and this type of coaching, it's mostly people that a lot of career coaching that they want to know how this would support their their
Sure.
careers.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
There's just so many ways. There's relationship coaching. One of my favorite things is just a tip for everyone. When you have a newborn, you pull their chart. You go figure out what their moon wants, so you don't have to stab in the dark when this poor little thing can't talk to you. Because trust me, a moon in Scorpio wants something completely different than a moon in Aquarius. And if you're a new mom, any tool that you can get to minimize suffering, I think is valuable. And this is one amazing tool that you could use for that. So, and you could find a life coach that does that. Let me help coach you with your children.
how often would you, I, as an individual, how often would I have a chart made?
So I would say if it's not for coaching, you do your birth chart reading, and then you can come every year for an updated solar return chart. So it'll tell you, okay, what's my upcoming year? What are my lessons for the year? What's going to unfold? Do I need a raincoat or do I need sunblock? And so that's called a solar return chart. It's always based off the natal chart. So I always tell people, come for natal reading first. Let me help you understand your map. And then every year you can come back to figure out what your upcoming year is going to be about. If you're interested in self-development, I tell people they can come like once every 2 weeks or once a month to review what's going on for this month. If knowing the whole year in advance is too much for you to chew on, then come once a month. Okay, let me focus on this month. What's coming for me this month so I can get through that. So I would say you can come once a year, once a month. If you want coaching, it can be more frequent.
Okay, if I was to say, I want your advice, I'm thinking of starting a business, I
Mhm.
want to start an insurance business or just any business.
Sure.
And my chart may indicate that it's really would not be in my best interest, or would not be in my interests. The chart would sort of forebode to say yes or no.
It would forebode, is the climate correct? Is the time correct? If you're in an ending phase, you don't want to start a new business. You want to wait till you're in a new phase. So you can look, and it's not saying don't open the business. It's saying when's the optimal time to open the business. And then there's is insurance for me? That's one question. But if I got my heart set on it, that's what I'm doing. You can absolutely look at your chart and go, this is a good time. This is not a good time. Like, for example, this talk, I pulled the chart before the talk to see if this was like an abundant time for me, or was I going to have difficulty. And the whole chart was Gemini. I was like, okay, I'm good, because this is the perfect time for me, because it's all about communication and sharing information. So I was prepared, whether it was going to be difficult or easy, just based on the chart for this time.
Very good.
Yep.
I was unprepared for this level of
That's
um,
okay.
specificity in astrology.
I
Um,
love your questions. They're perfect because you are someone who knows nothing. So you can then ask the questions a natural person would ask, because most people don't understand. So you're just doing your audiences a favor by asking the things they want to ask, because they don't know either.
okay. Um,
I can
you
move.
still,
Yep.
okay.
Go
I
ahead.
was going to
Yep.
say you're still using the chart.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is one other aspect. So if you want to talk about unlocking your true potential, your north node, which is this little thing right here that looks like a horseshoe, that tells you what your soul's purpose is. My soul came in to do what? This soul came in Aries to learn about being independent, to learn to be courageous, bold, lead the way, and start new stuff. And then the house it's in would be like, what kind of stuff? It could be, that house is accounting, but the north node is not what you're good at. Oops, I went ahead too fast. Sorry. The north node is your growth lessons. And then very opposite of it, because they come together as a pair, north node, south node. The south node is your past. This is what I brought into this life as a toolbox. And this is the place I'm going that I'm not good at yet, but I want to learn. So this is certainly good for people in their 20s, 30s. Okay, what's the lesson? Where am I going? If we're older and we haven't figured it out yet, we can say, okay, I learned that lesson. How do I expand and grow from that? So the north and the south node are very big components in unlocking your potential, because it really is your soul's intention.
Other than, as you said, a new mom,
Yep.
having a relationship with their child, um, how old would a person normally be to really benefit from a chart?
I wouldn't see somebody be any like 18 if it's the child itself, unless the mom was with me. And there's definitely I am personally very sensitive to that, because we don't want to imprint an idea that isn't optimal, right? And we're impressionable when we're younger. So I like 18 or older, or the mom has to be present so that we can have an open-ended conversation that doesn't plant any seeds either way, because we don't want to influence. Because what I
Okay.
say and what people perceive are two different things. You know what I'm saying? Because I can say one thing and I say to someone, repeat back to me what you heard, and they heard something totally different.
Right. No, I understand. But in terms of education, I'm always sort of like uh, some of these spiritual pathways and things with, kids, as you said, teenagers who are out there just
Yeah,
floating around and they have no direction. And I often wonder if we should not be giving them some direction at an earlier age. And
I would agree with you 100%.
because we have several modalities that we've gone through here locally, and a lot of them would be useful to
Absolutely.
a teenager that sort of doesn't know which direction they want to go in.
Absolutely. And you'd want to empower them to know their gifts. And so how they could feed what's natural for them and not have to push a rock uphill. So I totally agree. I'm sure there are plenty 16-year-olds Googling this stuff all day, you know?
Right.
Yeah. As a business, I'm just cautious. I make people sign consent forms, things like that, because I don't want to be responsible. I have to be very cautious and careful in the wording, because we don't know the mind frame of the client. But yes, answer is yes. This is an amazing tool. Any questions about the nodes?
uh no, I think the explanation was there. I mean, the questions are about the interpretations, right?
Sure, actually, and I don't have your chart, but I would interpret this North Node in Aries as someone who's breaking free. See, because the South Node's in Libra, so this person potentially could come in with people-pleasing habits, could be codependent in relationships. They could be so needy to have another that their soul wants them to learn to break free from that and have an interdependent relationship, learning how to step into their own independent self and still be in a relationship without getting swallowed up by another. That's an example. Does that help?
Yeah. What should we be reading just to get more informed on the topic?
I like astroking.com. Astrodeets.com is really good. There on YouTube, there's lots of people. I can tell you, Stormy Grace is amazing. Astrolata is another one. Just start poking around and just going on YouTube. That's a huge resource. And then there's, like I said, Astro King's one of my favorite websites. There's applications you can download on your phone. Astro Matrix, I love that one. That's this one, Astro Matrix. They do astrology and tarot. They kind of can combine the both. And all you have to do is put your information in with the prompts, and it'll bring up the chart, the definition, everything. Knowing what to do with that information is where the coach comes in. You can find this anywhere.
Right.
And but interpreting it is, like you said, is the hardest part. Practical applications, we've been talking about that. How do you use astrology in your relationships, self-development, career choices, life purpose? I think relationships is key. If you learn your person, you then can have fun with it. When they do something, as a practical example, I was moving some furniture with my boyfriend who has a Libra moon, who it's introverted. And I'm like, I'm going to drop the table. And he's a little slower because his Mercury is in retrograde. And he didn't respond. And I'm literally looking at him like I'm going to drop the table. But I know he has a pause because of the way his chart functions. So all I could do was just laugh. I can't even be mad at him because his planets just function that way. He needs to process. He processes slower than I am. So it can really save a lot of fights when it comes to relationships if you know your person. That's just one example.
Right. Can somebody become too dependent on
Yes,
their chart or on their everyday reading? There's like, I'm not going to leave the house today because, you know,
I
the
do believe
chart
that is true.
says, the
Mhm.
chart says stay home.
Yep. I believe like any other hobby, people can get obsessed and they don't, and they realize that astrology is life in motion. So you can't just, and literally like, for example, I looked at my chart and it said there was a possibility for a conflict, right? And I thought to myself, I am not getting in a conflict because I had a meeting to go to and it was on Zoom. No conflict, no problem. I go to the gym and I got into a conflict. Because so you can't prevent life from happening otherwise. So you can be too dependent because you can be overly dependent on the chart. I would say you use it as information and then use free will to make choices.
Um, and actually, I know you're the awareness coach and life coaching, and physical activity is very important in your outlook on that.
Well, for me, it is, yes. I'm not only a life coach, I actually own a gym. And
Okay.
so my chart has a lot of Mars. So I need physical activity. And so sitting on Zoom all day isn't always the best for me. So I do work out. So I also coach people with their health and wellness using nutrition and the chart or whatever it takes. But yes, I do think that that's important.
So that would be a suggestion to a client also about, you know, you need to be more active or
100%.
yeah.
So this is kind of off topic, but like my Mars, the planet Mars in my chart, which is the engine to my car, is in what's called out of bounds. That means it's past the normal limit. So that
Mhm.
says I have an abundance of Mars energy. So if I don't do sports, if I don't go to the gym, then that energy is gotta be an outlet somewhere, and you don't want to be the recipient of that, anybody in my life. So I personally go to the gym because my Mars is out of bounds. So I know that about myself, so I've built that into my life.
Um, how many hours a day
Do I
do you
go to
go
the
to
gym
the
or do people? I go to the gym for an hour a day. I personally go for an hour a day. My boyfriend goes 2 hours a day. He's a Capricorn. He works like a workhorse. So I think it's a Pisces can't go for 2 hours a day. You got to be realistic. But I go for an hour, at least 1 hour a day. If I'm being honest, then I go for a walk for another 45 minutes, but I don't consider that a workout.
I'm sure I have more questions here.
Yeah,
Um,
that's my last slide. Do you have any questions?
I'm not seeing any on the chat or any other of the participants here. Um, what about sleep and nutrition?
Mm-hmm.
How they all fold into this?
Sure.
Uh,
It's all there. It's all in the
uh,
chart.
well, particularly sleep. Just in terms of a sleep routine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, better from 9 at night or 10 at night or 11 at night, or some people function better, you know, the night owls actually function better at night, or is that true? Or
I would say, we would look at the phases of the moon for that. So, depending on what phase the moon was in when you were born, can dictate like, are you an early riser or aren't you? Do you like to initiate or don't you? So, you'd have to look at the whole chart comprehensively to establish that for oneself. But sure, yes, that these are all ways you could look at your chart to help you stay in alignment with your little map.
and the same with nutrition. You know, we got you go from vegans to carnivores, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and is that part of your chart? Is that part of your initial, your birth makeup, or?
Sure, that definitely contributes, depending on where, what's in your sixth house, because that rules nutrition. It's ruled by Virgo. So, do you have planets in there? What are those planets doing? Are they in a good position? Because planets can be in a disadvantaged position or in a positive position. And so we would have to take all of those things into consideration. And I know this talk isn't about this, but for nutrition, I tend to look at human design personally, but that's another topic because I use human design more for how someone eats myself personally, but it is in the chart. When people come to me, I will pull that up for them as well if that's their concern. So there's so much you can learn. That's really what I want you to take away is just go learn your moon sign at the very least so you know your emotional self and you can figure out what it is that you need to feel emotionally satisfied so that you can feel in alignment with yourself.
Right. And I guess some of the sites you recommended, like Astro King or Astro Matrix, um, they provide charts.
Yeah, they do. Yep, they sure do.
What if I don't know my exact birth time?
That's tricky. I'm not going to lie. That is very tricky. There is what's called like a chart rectification. You'd have to go to a specialist because some people, let's say, who have been adopted and they don't have any idea. There are ways through questioning to figure it out, but it is on your birth certificate. So most people can look on their birth certificate. It's on there. The second best source, ask your mom, what time you were born. At the very least, if she can tell you AM or PM, or if she can tell you between 12 and 2. But if it's like, I have no idea, then you need to go to a specialist to figure that out because it's tricky.
Right. Now I know
Yeah.
I have a twin sister and we're the youngest of 7 kids.
Oh,
And when we asked my mother and she goes, "Oh, I don't remember,"
is it on your birth certificate?
I
You should be.
I believe it's on the hospital record. I don't think
Yep.
it's on the birth certificate, but I can double check that.
If you dig, you can find it. I was born in New York myself, and it's
Yeah.
on my birth certificate. And you can find it. I would say make some effort and find it because it's very important.
Um,
It's
is there's
so,
a preponderance of births are usually early morning, right? Is that a
I don't
key?
know this. I don't know the statistics on how many are in the morning or how many are in the
Yeah.
night, but
So
I would
no,
say twins is an interesting topic because
yeah.
if you're born only minutes apart, the charts can be identical and their lives can be completely different.
Oh, totally,
Yeah,
totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as far as the hospital record, it was a minute or two difference.
right.
Uh, but no, we're totally different people. So,
Yep, free will. We have free will
yeah.
to choose how we're going to express things, right?
No. Uh,
That's all I have for you.
okay.
Unless you have something specific you want to talk about.
No, I think it's been really very informative. It it makes astrology sound much more interesting. I think you did a fantastic job with us. Um, as I said, it's leading up to this. It's sort of like everybody knew their sun sign, and it was just a little thing in the newspaper, and I only ever looked at it on my birthday, and
Mhm.
um, but it's much more informative. It's how in depth it is, and really, it's got some really concrete information.
And
So,
practical uses. There are so many practical uses for astrology. I have a Virgo moon. We love practicality. So if you come to me, I'm going to give you practical uses for it
right.
and how you can use it to enhance your life.
And do you think Pat Nixon was really running the country with her astrologer?
I think those astrologers had way more power than we think. And it was
Yeah.
JP Morgan who said that millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do.
Right.
So, there's something to it. I mean, there's a lot of very smart, powerful people who use it.
Uh, Very good. It's just been an excellent presentation. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
I'm happy that you were here, and you're welcome. Come back at any time, and
Well,
I don't
thank
know.
you.
I don't know if we can get more in depth or not, but
I feel blessed. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a great opportunity. I was born in New York, so I appreciate you inviting me and sharing your space with me and your kind presentation skills.
So I don't see any more questions arising here. So again, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And for everyone else listening, be with us again next Tuesday at 7 o'clock and we'll have another presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.